front of the home folks next Friday night, then they're back in the what-if situation,
Yeah.
But I believe they will. But they're still in a very difficult group. I mean, Racing look like a team that are on a mission, and that that's not good news for Ulster. I think Leicester are in trouble. I would discount them, but yeah, I have to say, look, credit is due. A great performance, probably for me the performance of the week. I mean, giving credit to Connacht as well in very bad conditions, but I don't think they were up against much of an opposition, but they still had to get it done.
No,
so that was the performance of the week for Ulster for sure, and something to build on. But look, they've been in that situation before and they haven't built on it, so the jury's out on that. But let's see.
Yeah, no, it seems Scarlets aren't quite at the races, and they've lost big players, not least Tadhg Byrne. Rory, there is a Jekyll and Hyde element to Ulster. There has been for a number of years, so you'll be looking to see them really build on what happened at the weekend this Friday coming at Belfast. The thing which you raised a few times about Ulster over the last year certainly was their forwards and like the work rate, and there were some fairly shameful performances thrown in from a few individuals in their forward pack, but that was not the case on Friday.
Yeah, their tight five, I think, is what's let them down in a lot of games. And I was in Racing for their game against Ulster, and like Ulster played quite well that day in patches, but every time they went into the scrum, in the tight exchanges, they really, really struggled. But they've got Marty Moore fit now. He looks like a solid tight head with a lot of European and international experience. And then Eric O'Sullivan, a Dubliner, has gone up and become part of their academy and has kind of slowly but surely built his way into a position where they're playing him for 80 minutes in a European pool game against the Welsh front row, and did really well. Rory Best we know all about, and it looks like November has stood to him. It looks like he's kind of stepped on again. Ian Henderson we know all about, and Kieran Treadwell's a player that they recruited with a big CV from Harlequins, a former England under-20 international, got an Ireland cap but hasn't really shown, like, he has the size, but you'd wonder about him putting it about, and it looked again on Friday night like all those players got up for it. And there's one thing you can say you can't complain about Ulster this season, is that they have fought for Dan McFarland at every moment, every turn. They've got so many last gasp wins. They've lost games they probably should have won, but it was more through accuracy and through mistakes than their commitment. Their commitment levels have been really, really good. They're playing for their coach.
Yeah.
They haven't been playing that well. But that Friday night was their best performance so far. It looked like a lot of their games, they look like they've been struggling, whereas there was a bit of freedom to their play on Friday night, and that was great to see. Scarlets didn't play well, they didn't defend well. Addison was given the freedom of Colletley and showed what he can do.
Yeah.
But that's not Ulster's problem. Ulster went over there to a difficult away venue and won well. I know the score was very tight in the end, but they were, they got nicely ahead in that second half, and they've given themselves a shot. They got to go to Welford Road. They've got to firstly back it up on Friday night, then they've got to go to Welford Road. With Racing coming to Belfast in between, and Racing are the one French team that you can be sure will travel. So they're not there.
Yeah.
But I gave them very little chance of getting to a quarter-final at the outset, and they've given themselves a real shot now.
Yeah, Eddie, finally, how do you see that group then? So do you make Racing firm favourites going to Belfast, and the hope for Ulster is they sneak through as a best runner-up?
On the balance of what I've seen so far, yes. But having said that, to be fair, Ravenhill, can be a bit of a citadel at times, and I've seen French teams go before there and get caught. But you have to judge the French teams on what their intent is, and I think Racing are after the European Cup this year. It's part of what they want, and I think they'll go there locked and loaded, and they're a very good team, Racing. But it just shows, like yesterday, they struggled to put away a dogged Leicester team who just kept coming at them. Like after 20 minutes, it was going to be a blowout. So they're not. It's not saying they can't be beaten, but it would be a hell of an achievement. I just think at the moment, Ulster could probably get out of that group as a runner-up. If they get out to win it, to really light up their season, that's for sure.
Yeah, we'll see how things go next Friday for starters. So do get your questions in for Eddie and for Rory. Heineken Star comments to the usual places. We're streaming here on Facebook and YouTube and Periscope, and Rugby and Off the Ball is with thanks to eirSport, the home of rugby in Ireland. We had commentary here ourselves of Bath, Leinster at the Rec on Saturday. Bath 10, Leinster 17. It boiled down to one very key moment. Trust me, it did. Imagine you're hearing commentary of Jordan Larmour's try right now. That's what's going on. So Larmour's try was the decisive score in the game. Flaggate also cropped up here. So the flags weren't allowed in. The Leinster Supporters Club not very happy with this. They're saying the flags failed the health and safety test, tweeted the Leinster Supporters Club. These flags have been passed as safe by airports and stadia all over the world. And there were Bath flags there as well. So there were 1,500 flags not allowed in because the shaft in them was breakable and therefore they could be a weapon.
It failed fire safety as well, didn't it? The Bath said there was a fire issue, a fire hazard as well. So
right.
Health and safety comes first, Joe, and we all know that. We have to be very Leinster fans. I'm sure weren't too upset once the final whistle went, but it looked like a good atmosphere over there. Like all that being said, it looked like a proper game, a proper European game in a good venue, good to watch. But yeah, that's a bit of nonsense.
It was.
We want more colour at the games, don't we? Not less.
Well, I mean, you think of the flags, I mean, really add a sense of occasion to the thing, and it's something you want. But anyway, Bath, they're doing what Bath want to do. Leo Cullen, Eddie said, you need to figure out why you didn't play well. So is it down to us or is it down to Bath? What was your read on this game?
I think it was down to Bath, in fairness. And I think, just very honest, that Leo, they didn't play well, but I thought they were only allowed to play as well as they played. The difference in the teams was that intercept try, I mean, had they not picked that up, and Bath shot themselves in the foot. Apart from that, like, I think the penalty that sealed the game, Ross Byrne kicked, Bath were in full flow and turned the ball over, and Leinster broke out and got the penalty. They're huge moments in the game. But I think Bath, the good things Bath had was they won the back row battle. I think I was surprised that the starting lineup that Levy started at 8. When I saw that, my first thought was that Conan had to be injured, but he was not. He was on the bench. And I think, to be fair to Levy, he struggled at 8, particularly at scrum time. He didn't look comfortable there. And then when it came to the breakdown, I thought Sam Underhill and Francois Lowe probably edged it there. They had some major turnovers at big times, especially when Leinster were on the front foot. When Leinster get on the front foot and they go through those 15, 20, 22 phases, there's almost an inevitability about a score. But like, either Underhill or Lowe got their hands on the ball at crucial times and stopped Leinster. So I think the back row is an issue. Plus, I think the lineup was an area that didn't fire well. They didn't get the quality possession. They lost a couple. Ironically, the try came from a lost lineout. They actually lost that lineout, and then Bath through the intercept. So a lot of things kind of went Leinster's way. But the overall picture for me was that I thought Leinster got pushed around a bit by Bath. Bath were actually more physical than Leinster. They looked like they were winning collisions more, and Bath undid themselves by trying to be smart. Bath's turnovers came from trying to play around the corner rather than playing through the middle. And had Bath just stuck to going through the middle more, they might have got a better result of it. So Leinster were very worried on a few fronts. The line-out didn't fire well. They got beaten at the breakdown, and then they got bullied a bit when Bath ran straight at them. And that's not what Leinster allow happen. So they do have some fixes to put in. No doubt they will, but they're the areas they need to fix. In
fairness, you've echoed really what Leo Cullen said afterwards as well. He said we lacked a little bit of punch in the collision part of the game, which ties in with your point about the physicality side of things. And you would think Robbie Henshaw or Tamane would have been very useful in there in that midfield. Noel Reid was in, Rory, and then Underhill and Francois Lowe. Todd Blackadder said we really targeted the breakdown. That was our big thing that we went after. They might have had 8 or 9 turnovers, so they did cause havoc. Why would Dan Levy have started at 8? What's the logic?
We haven't quite got to the bottom of it. Stuart Lancaster was the coach put up today, and other things, other matters dominated the agenda, so it didn't really get into the tactics.
In short, his future looks to be at Leinster next year anyway.
He's going to chat with Andy Farrell in the next couple of weeks, so there's a bit of... He said he's really happy at Leinster, but he's leaving the door open for he didn't commit to definitely being there. I would put my money that he probably would be there, but he's going to chat to Andy Farrell anyway. But anyway, he dominated the agenda today, so we didn't quite get into the intricacies of the back row selection. But I think Jack Conan picked up a knock at the end of November and was possibly a bit undercooked. Levy, I thought, looked a bit undercooked. And it was interesting that they went for Levy. If they weren't sure about Conan, the next man up would probably be either Doris or Max Deegan, who've both gone well in those games where Leinster impressed. And I thought Leinster really had got to a place where if a young guy's doing well, they put him in. But instead they probably tried to overthink things with the Underhill and Lowe combination and pick 2 sevens themselves. As Eddie said, Levy didn't look that comfortable at 8. But again, I wouldn't write it off as an experiment. Just, I think that's coachable. Being able to, if you haven't controlled the ball at the base for 4 or 5 years, you used to play 8 in school. It's going to come as a surprise then when the ball comes hammering at you, and it's probably something that's very hard to replicate in training if the scrum's a little bit wobbly. But I do think Bath, and Eddie touched on this, I think in his piece this morning, Bath really did put a template in place for other teams to go at Leinster. It's probably not too different what Racing did in the final as well. If you can slow down their ball, if you can get turnovers, you can get over the ball, if you can win the collisions and stop them getting front foot ball, they become a very ordinary team. And most weeks we're in here waxing lyrical about Leinster, but they are very much human, and they aren't that far ahead of the pack that a good team, and Bath are not that good a team. I think a better team than Bath would have won that game because they did everything to put themselves in a position to win it, but threw away the ball at key occasions. They were undone by, I thought, a very short advantage for the.
Just going to ask. So, is Wilson entitled to think he was still throwing that ball with an advantage
in a loud stadium? I'm not sure he's heard. I'm not sure if he's heard the referee. There was 2 passes before he called advantage over. They hadn't got over the advantage line. I know scrum advantage is shorter than penalty advantage, but I think they were entitled to think they probably had that pass in them. It was probably risky on a scrum advantage, but at the same time, it was very, very short.
Yeah.
I thought Reynal gave them the benefit of the doubt at a lot of breakdowns. I think once he got over the ball, he was favouring the player over the ball, so they got a lot of penalties off the back of that, albeit Leinster got a crucial one from Gibson Park later on. But that was a key moment in the game, and if I was top back at her, you'd be questioning Matthew Reynal's the length of the advantage there.
Yeah. Especially for such a crucial moment.
Yeah, exactly. So Leinster have gone away twice in Europe and they've struggled both times. Both times they've been beaten a bit at the breakdown. They got an intercept against them in Toulouse. They got one for them in Bath. These are the margins that you're playing at, and they're still in a decent position.
Yeah.
But there's definitely going to be work done this week. They've got plenty of things to kind of sift through and improve on. I imagine Conan comes into the number 8 jersey this week.
Yeah.
There's not much wiggle room around centre. There's not. Robbie Henshaw's out until after the first 2 games of the Six Nations, it looks like. So
Tamane's long term.
Tamane's long term. There is Rory O'Loughlin, but again, he's more like, he's a lighter, strong but light. So there is no ready-made solution. There is Conor O'Brien, this academy kid, who's been really good and is big, but they've been reluctant to put him in for these games.
Okay.
So it's interesting.
Todd Blackadder has promised, by the way, full medal jacket was his phrase, selection for next weekend. We'll have to see. That was before Toulouse beat Wasps as well. One other refereeing decision just worth remarking on, Eddie. Reynal opted not to card Joe Cokanasiga for the tackle on McGrath. If people didn't see it, McGrath caught the ball and was falling backwards and fell low, relatively low, and he was hit around the head area. There wasn't even a yellow card given. Cullen said afterwards that he didn't think it was a straightforward call, so he said fair enough, and he wasn't going to crib too much about it. I know others thought it was absolutely a yellow, and there was even an argument of a red. How did you read that one?
Well, I'm actually glad he didn't give a yellow card, and I'll tell you why. I think we're getting into very dangerous territory with the tackle, the high tackle, and we're all on board why we're trying to eliminate it. But up to recently, there was no obligation on the ball carrier to protect himself. So, ultimately, if I'm going into contact with a ball, I can duck at the last second and probably get a penalty or get you yellow carded. And referees were going by the letter on that, and there were some very harsh yellow cards and very harsh penalties. And you could see that the guy carrying the ball was kind of at least 50% responsible for what happened to him. So I think in the last couple of weeks they haven't announced this, but they seem to be looking at the event on a case-by-case basis. And if you contribute as a ball carrier to being tackled high, then it might be a penalty, but they're not going to send a guy off for 10 minutes and change the game. And I think that's fair.
Okay.
And I think on that basis, Reynal got that right. And I think, in fairness to Leo, he's been honest about it, that the guy went in to make a tackle and McGrath ducked at the last second and he caught him high. He definitely caught him high, there's no doubt. But we have to, I think it's a great thing that they're saying to ball carriers, you will not automatically get a penalty, or you will not automatically get somebody yellow carded by ducking. And I don't think McGrath was doing that intentional either. I'm not suggesting that for a second. But there is a little bit of fair play around it now, and I think they're trying to manage it, and I think it's a good development, I have to say.
Okay, fair point. Munster 30, Castra 5. You were at this game, Rory. I was in here, I didn't see it so much. A bonus point dropped was
Better
the general consensus. It wasn't a thriller. 6-0 at half time. There should have been tries in the first half. They scored 3 in fairness in the second half, but they didn't play particularly well, Munster.
They played better than Cass. Cass come over with the game plan it was basically anti-rugby. It was just like they barely ever made a pass beyond one out, and it was a box kick. And it was very much, you have the ball, bad conditions, you have the ball, we'll try and make you make mistakes. But they didn't bring the rest of the game. They couldn't pressurise Munster into the mistakes. So they just kicked it back to Munster, and Munster went through phases. And while they didn't play any rugby, they certainly came to make tackles, and they weren't easily beaten. But Munster did create enough field position and opportunity to score a try in the first half. Conor Murray looked like he'd been out for a while in that first half. He produced 2 moments of magic in the second half. That's, won them the game effectively. But in the first half, he just little moments that you would uncharacteristic for him. He threw 2 really tough passes at Tadhg Beirne. One of them he didn't know was coming. The other one was up around his shoulder at 90 miles an hour. Just things that he, 2 weeks time, Conor Murray doesn't do that. Andrew Conway gets through a gap and doesn't spot Mike Haley on his shoulder. And I think once you got that first try, you kind of break Castor open, away from home in those conditions. And it was tricky. It was wet before kick-off, and then it was very windy during the game. But they played good rugby in the second half. They figured Cast out. They were very good in the set piece. They dominated up front. They won the breakdown. And Cast coach Joe Elab afterwards said, look, it wasn't us not trying to play. Munster were really good and didn't let us play. So they got the pressure side right, but didn't quite get the creativity to click. But Cast just showed absolutely nothing. And the frustrating thing about Cast is that on Saturday they're going to be good, and they're going to play all the things they weren't able to do this weekend that suddenly produce it on home turf. And it's just this enigmatic, cliched nonsense that they go through. They've got a couple of players to come back. They've got a front row that they brought on at half time that were way better and put Munster in all sorts of trouble. But even when they won penalties at the scrum, they couldn't make it pay. And it just ended up being this really weird game where everyone knew Munster were going to win. It was just a matter of how they were going to get there. And Cass brought on a winger, and he was good, but then they never gave him the ball, and you're just like just get it over with.
So you really enjoyed it, is what you're telling me.
Once, after an hour, 3 Cass players had touched the ball 10 or more times, and everyone else was in single figures, and 2 of their backs had never touched the ball at all.
Right. Did you keep count of that?
I checked the stats just on the hour mark. I just couldn't get over it.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I saw a team come over with such a limited negative game plan. And I don't know how you expect it's like football, or the blanket defence in football. Like, how do you expect to win? You can contain so long, but Castor in the hunt for.
Well, look, they might argue we kept them to 4 points. It's 4-0. Their coach said it's 4-0. If we can replicate that or even better at next weekend, then it's a result for us.
That's true.
It's worth just remarking, Eddie, on JJ Hanrahan, the prodigal son, who just 6 years ago was shortlisted for Under-20s Player of the Year. In his 22 appearances for Munster in this competition, yesterday was the first time he's actually started at number 10. By all accounts, had a very good game. What do you make of Hanrahan? What could he do? It's fairly clear Carberry's the outright number 10 there by a bit of a distance. But Hanrahan, is it too much to hope that he might really challenge Carberry?
The problem for JJ is getting the opportunity on the big occasions. No, he certainly took his chance yesterday against a terrible Cast team. I thought they were dreadful, to be fair. And I think that performance by Munster, there's a lot of question marks still around it. That seems very harsh. But going back to JJ, he did really well. The problem for him is getting enough of games under his belt. He has a reputation in Munster of having bad moments, where he does well and then something goes badly wrong, like a loose kick or an intercept or something. No, he's had that reputation for a long time before he left for Northampton. And the problem for him is getting enough opportunities to prove people wrong on that. But he got his chance yesterday and he took it. But they'll factor into that Cast team were shocking. They just were awful. They didn't bring it into the party. They tackled a fair bit. But, they still missed 32 tackles. And I would think Munster would have to look at themselves and wonder how in God's name they didn't get a bonus point win within an hour. And in fairness to Munster tries, again, look, if you analyse them, Conor Murray set up the first one. That was appalling defence. They had one defender and a pillar. So 2 defenders covering 20 metres of Cowan Park, and Conor spotted it. And the same for his line break for the next try. That was again a dreadful defence, for CJ Stander's try. And then even the third try, I think I was surprised that JP Doyle didn't go back and check the forward pass that looked forward to JJ Hanrahan. The last transfer looked that went forward. So in fairness, and I'm a big fan of Conor Murray. Obviously, he's a phenomenal player. He's the best in the world. But any club scrum half would have taken the 2 chances he set up. They were just appalling defence. There was nothing to it. So the problem for Munster is, and it's hard to say, but Munster still don't know where they are, like, you know. And the other part of the game that didn't suit Munster yesterday, and they shouldn't have probably got into, was there was a lot of afters as the game went on, and it got worse and worse. Every ruck, there was somebody pushing somebody, pulling and dragging, and there was verbals, and there was hell shaking, and it was just stirring it all up for next week going down to Cast, and Cast will love that.
Yeah.
Like the mob in Cast will be delighted that Munster are coming to town. Like, they'll be swinging out their rafters and shouting abuse.
Yeah.
So Munster probably didn't need to get into that nonsense with them and kind of cool their jets. The game was won, but I just worry that Munster just didn't. That Castle team should have been dead and buried at the hour mark, and the bonus point right should have been in the bag. You know, like, they had 70-something percent possession first half, they didn't score a try. And you can go back to where they didn't score them, but I think it's still a worry for Munster. Like, and that's a harsh thing to say when they score 30 points, but like, most teams would have buried that Cast team a lot earlier, and that's something Munster to look themselves in the mirror and say, well, how come that didn't happen?
Yeah,
I think they're going to win the pool, but just looking across the 5 of them, I think they're the lowest ranked of the 5 pool leaders. So currently they're outside that bracket for a home quarter final, and they want to move up that as much, and that's where the not getting the bonus point could come back to haunt them, you know, quite significantly in a month or two.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Before we go, Eddie, I'm sure you saw Brian O'Driscoll's comments here last week, which have generated much discussion, huge amount of discussion over the last week or so. In short, he talked about, the word habit was used. He got into the habit for the last 4 or 5 years of his career of a combination of diaphene and cocodamol and caffeine and Valium, and when he needed it, which he often did, and he said a lot of the older players did need it, and also to some extent really when he didn't, it just became a habit, and it seemed like it was very, very available. Doctors in the team bus. So all legal, we should say. It is inside a line, but the player welfare issue has certainly been raised for a starter, and there is a more philosophical discussion about whether or not it enhances your performance to some degree or other. Does that experience, Brian's experience, fit in with the picture you saw in your era in Irish rugby, Eddie?
No, actually it doesn't, in the sense that like, the team doctors I had was actually, the team doctor I had the longest was Gary O'Driscoll, who was a team doctor in Arsenal. He's a cousin of Brian's, he was there. And I never got involved in the allocation of drugs anyway, it's not my area, so the doctor would have all his conversations. But I'm sure if guys wanted an anti-inflammatory, they got it, or if they needed a painkiller, they got it, or they needed a sleeping tablet, they got it. But I think that there's a line there you have to be careful, is that firstly, you're right, they're not illegal. If a doctor gives them to you, it's prescription medication, so a doctor's entitled to. The question is the doctor giving you those medications to get you on the field? And that's the brutal question. And that's not the right thing to do. And I don't know any doctors that do that I'm aware of, that will give you a medication that if you didn't have it, you wouldn't be able to play. And that's the actual kernel of it. Like, if you were to do that, Jen, you would be abusing painkillers or whatever to get on the field. But I don't know if Brian ever said that he actually took medication to get on the field to play. I think he was going to play anyway. He might have felt better about taking some anti-inflammatories or something before a game. But that's where I see it. Yeah. And I don't remember the doctor going down the bus tossing out painkillers like Smarties, you know. That was never my experience. That I know players would go to the doctor if they had a bruise or they had a pain. And the other thing is, goes into as well, like that it's actually illegal under rugby regulations to give a player a painkilling injection the day of a game to get him on the field. That's illegal. Right. And the logic as well is that, you know, if a player can't play because of pain, he shouldn't be on the field. So that's the line I would draw on it.
So how do we reconcile that with Brian's comments then?
Well, the question is, was Brian ever asked to take medication to get on the field? Was he ever asked to give him painkillers to get on the field? I don't believe so. Not in my experience with him. I think he might have taken a painkiller before a game if he felt he needed it. But was he going to play with or without it? I think he would have played with or without it if that's the case. I don't remember ever an experience of him having to take a painkiller to get on the field. Yeah. In my experience with him. And I can only speak in my experience with him. Yes, I appreciate the team doctor, we had Gary O'Driscoll, who's a cousin of Brian's at the time, for most of my tenure with Ireland. He was the guy in charge of all that. And I can't imagine I don't ever remember him going on the bus throwing out painkillers. I think there is an area there, we're talking about, and it's an area worth discussing that maybe as the game moves on and the ball is in play more and there's more tackles and there's more collisions, the players need to fall back on painkillers and anti-inflammatories all the time, and that's a bad thing. But we have to be careful. We're talking about medication here, and we're talking about doctors who are professionals, healthcare professionals who are managing these players, and they are in charge of actually giving out that medication. So, that's what it comes down to, a doctor making a decision if you need the medication or not. But for me, that type of medication, that's not illegal, it's not performance enhancing. Does the player take it to get on the field? No, so if he didn't take it, he wouldn't get on the field. That's the big question. Other than that, it's probably a placebo effect, I think,
Well, placebo effect and also the actual effect, I suppose, as well. It strikes me, Rory, over the last few days that rugby's difficulty now is that Brian gave his experience very honestly, candidly. I think he was probably surprised at the storm it's whipped up, to tell you the truth. The RFU released a statement on Friday night to say they had the best protocol in place and everything is fine. And Leo Cullen said words to the effect that, well, I don't know what it was like in the past necessarily. I don't want to talk about the past, but things are done to the highest possible standards now. And there will be an element where people will look in somewhat sceptically and say, so since Brian's retired, and Brian said he understands it's tougher to get the medication now. Since Brian's retired in the last 4 years, there's been something approaching a transformation or a very big change in the culture. Well, no one was sounding the alarm 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, and now everybody's expected to believe that things are being done perfectly now. Rugby will have to prove that in a way. I'm not quite sure how they do that, but they'll have to do more than a statement, I would think, on a Friday night for this not to arise again here and there intermittently.
Yeah, and it comes against the backdrop of people, teams being more secretive around injuries and things like that. And and this is, it didn't quite open a can of worms because Brian was just echoing what was in a piece that you referenced on the night by Alan Dimmock in Rugby World. Paul O'Connell wrote about it in his book. This is out there, but when Brian O'Driscoll says it, he puts it on to a whole new level. And I think the game, it's healthier for the game that it is out there and people are talking about it. And again, there is that performance enabling rather than performance enhancing elements. There are question marks over whether it's safe or fair on players that they feel like they have to do that. But again, there is a personal responsibility and a personal choice there, but it's whether the clubs are enabling that and whether they're facilitating that.
Because Jack Berger in the Dimmock piece, he used the phrase informed consent. So he was saying he took a painkiller or of some variety every day for the last 3 years of his career, but he said, I understood the dangers, I understood it's not great for me, I would do it again, it was informed consent and it's legal.
Yeah.
And then the interesting discussion there is, well, should the club doctors allow that? Should they save him from himself?
And that's, it's do no harm. Is the team doctor there to help keep the player fit, or is he there to get the player fit to go onto the pitch? And there are all sorts of different issues around that. It's a very interesting topic, full of grey areas and full of I'm not sure how I feel about it all. I remember reading about Daniel Laggard, the Liverpool footballer, a couple of years ago when he spoke about his struggle with painkillers and the fact that he became very much reliant on them through the last couple of years, and he retired early because he just didn't want to do it anymore. And I'm sure there are players in that boat right now who have experienced that. We can only take the provinces and the organisations at their word that it is much tighter now, that there's much stricter protocols in place. But it's a very tough physical game, very demanding on the body. In Ireland, we play less games than in other nations. There's other people, there's players playing in Champions Cup this weekend. They've played 4 tests last month, and that's got to be taking a toll as you go into your 30s and you near the end and you kind of fit. But you've got a contract, you're chasing a contract, you don't want to give up.
Yeah.
There's pressure coming from every angle, and I guess what we need is and what we want and we hope they're doing is that the medical professionals are there to say no as well as yes.
Yeah, Shane Horgan was on Virgin Television at the weekend. I was talking to him post-game, on air by the way, I'm not divulging anything, and he made that argument that professional rugby is not good for you. There's a price you're paying with your body. In most jobs of any manual labour, sport or otherwise, you're paying a price with your body, and he said he took diaphene plenty of times because frankly he needed to. Is there anything proactive, Eddie, I wondered, that Irish rugby or provincial rugby could do to allay fears? I mean, everything from without naming names, document how many players are taking painkillers or anti-inflammatories of a given game and publish it at the end of the season, as open themselves up to scrutiny. Would that be a proactive move, I wonder?
I'm sure if they said the more information the better, but I think the problem with that is that you're getting into kind of deep waters with, like we've seen the information lately about like Munster not want to comment on Conor Murray's neck. There's a medical side to that. So I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I think it's better, though, the more open we can be. I mean, maybe the protocols have to be that, like, doctors can't issue any medication to players 24 or 48 hours from a game, Now, that has its own problem. So if you have a headache the morning of the game, can you take to a disprin? Like, it sounds silly, but they may have to put more rigid protocols in place. Yeah. But I think the bottom line is, and I keep saying this, the bottom line is that, and I believe that doctors I've had experience with, they are looking out for the player. They're almost protecting the player from themselves. Most players, given the choice to play or not play with injury, will play.
Sure.
I've known that.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Most of my experience, 9 times out of 10, you're telling the player you are not playing, and they're very upset by that.
Yeah.
I've had that experience many times because the doctor said no, and that's it. So, I think, to be fair to doctors, now, the question is a doctor giving a medication to a player to get him on the field? I think that's a no-no under any circumstances. Mm-hmm. Now, if they're giving him stuff to make him feel better, you could say, well, there's no need for that, cut that out.
Yeah, yeah.
But there is some point in the week, though, if you've got a bruised leg on a Sunday and you take Diphene on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday to help you get fit for the weekend, I don't see what the problem with that is. There's nothing wrong with taking an anti-inflammatory. Or if you can't sleep on a Wednesday night with a bang in your knee, you take a painkiller to get some sleep. Like, they're the areas we're in here.
Yes.
And there's cases from both sides.
Yeah.
But I think the bottom line is,
would you have concern
to get on the field?
Sorry to interrupt. Would you have concern there? I mean, look, James Collins has left a comment saying nobody is surprised about what Brian had to say. Let's not be shocked and blame. Let's just talk openly about it and deal with the issue. And that is what we're trying to do. I think calm voices here is all important. So would you be uncomfortable at the thought of a 24, 25-year-old who is only focused on the short term, taking that much Diphene, across a week? And I mean, Diphene in particular has a bad reputation, and I don't know if it's as recommended as it used to be. There's links with various issues down the line. But regardless, some Diphene or some equivalent. Would part of you feel uneasy about a 23, 24-year-old who is so focused on the short term, putting their body through that across a week, Eddie?
I think for a short term, if someone's got a bruise, you take it. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with taking it for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
But if you're taking it for 5 or 6 months to get through the season, that is a problem.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay.
Nobody's recommending that.
Yeah.
And I've taken Diphene myself because I have a bad back. So if someone takes Diphene to overcome a short-term injury like a dead leg or a bruised knee, but if you were taking Diphene 7 days a week, 4, 5, 6, 7 months of the season to get through the season, that is a problem. Absolutely, no question about that. And we shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah,
there should be a better way than that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I appreciate you both coming on, Eddie. Thanks a million. And Rory O'Connor from the Irish Independent. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball
with eirSport. Watch live Pro 14 action on eirSport this season. Visit eirsport.ie.